John, I love your energy this morning, about as much as my energy pre-call.
I just got back from Amsterdam and Prague and Bruges and so I got
Learning,
in
learn
late last night, so I'm a little punchy.
home inspection conferences.
I was checking out the buildings that were from 1200s, 1400s, imagining what it would be like to do a home inspection. That would be
Why?
nutty.
Funny enough, I actually have teed up for us today a picture from a home that might have been built back in those times. So we're gonna we're gonna start with a who can tell us what this is. I think you sent me this actually a while ago, and you haven't been able to get on our call for the past few weeks. So let me share this up
My
on the.
apologies.
You're muted, Steve.
How about now?
Good.
I'm back. All right. Who wants to take a shot at what that is?
Anyone?
I have actually never seen that in a showing until this picture got sent to me.
That's the first time I've seen it too.
Oh, all right. Nobody's got a guess?
Is that in the basement?
It's in the
Yes.
well, yeah.
It's in the basement.
Gonna be a shut off for the wastewater line, right?
You got it.
Of course I do. First
That's
time
a
on the call,
funky-
Steve.
That's a funky situation. So all you could do is cut it out and hard pipe it, but you got to dig it up.
So I cheated and used ChatGPT, and it told me it could be one of two things based on that. One was the shut off for the waistline, right? So this is basically when we say shut off for waistline, we're talking about to stop the backflow of sewage coming back into the house, right? It's kind of what
Correct.
now we have these backflow preventers.
Yeah.
But it
It
also
could be
said,
used for stormwater too.
oh, and for stormwater. It
FYI.
also said they used to do these big hand wheels for just your regular water shut off, your main water line shut off, where just to make it easy and accessible and so that you'd know where the hell it was. I don't know. So,
The
but this
line's
one
too
was,
big to be a water line,
yeah.
So yeah, I've seen them, a smaller version, and I've seen them with the flappers that are ABS. I don't recommend those because the the device that pops up when it's flowing and pops down when it's a backflow, oftentimes those get broken, and then you got to dig them up. So
This should be a new segment on the wire. So when you guys are out doing your showings, or John, when you guys, if you can comb through some of your old inspection reports, and we should just
Okay.
have a segment called "What the hell is that?"
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, and send those messages over to me. We should have one of these on every call. Anybody
There's a
just have
fun one,
any
too.
questions, comments, concerns around that main water shutoff lines or anything with the sewer lines? Just since we're on this topic, anybody have something recently come up on a deal or?
You should have another picture.
That's the only one I got teed up for today, buddy.
Okay, that's fine. No
Yeah.
worries. I'm tired anyway, so no
Yeah.
worries.
Anybody else? John, you have any other kind of comments of what agents need to be looking out for on this stuff? I mean, I know one thing, don't touch them. The main water shut off, this is a pro tip for sure, is a valve that very rarely gets used. And because it very rarely gets used, it can often be jammed in a position, it can be brittle, and the last thing that you want to do is try and turn the main water line, main shutoff line on or off on a property. And then now potentially you've got no way to stop water from coming in and out of the property. So do not, touch that line when you're doing a showing, or somebody wants you to, oh, you can just turn the water on, we had shut the main water line, cause we're, not there, or we're away, or you can just turn it on. I wouldn't be touching that.
One last thing is if you see what looks like blistering on the bottom of the sewer lines, that's an indication that there's a groove out in the bottom and it's starting to penetrate through. So that's something that you want to point out and say, hey, this needs to be repiped. Here's a solution. But I will tell you, it's about 125 to 140 per foot as far as replacing a main line from the foundation to the street. That doesn't include repiping inside. And I can get you an estimate for piping in about 20 minutes. So you have that.
Any other questions around this stuff, you guys? All right, let me go into some of the news that I just kind of wanted to share. First one is just some data coming out of Redfin. Typical, let me get this back up on the screen for you guys. Typical home sale now is spending 43 days on market. So we are back to 2015 levels on average. Again, New England holding a little bit stronger than that. I don't have it. This is national data as of July, but you guys can kind of see the trend. We were down to 16 days during COVID. It's just been steadily creeping up. I was reading another article. I don't have the exact stats around it, but like the home builder incentives are also at the highest level in I want to say in like a decade as well. So sellers are starting to have to do more things to get these properties sold. And I was talking to a couple agents around the office. It seems like even in New England, things are definitely slowing down a little bit. So I don't know if anybody has any comments around this or wants to chat about it, but I think we really got to be careful with what we are telling our sellers as far as expectation setting. What the market is showing in their specific area when you are talking about bringing a property to market. Because I promise you, the worst thing is having a listing, that is not moving. And every week you're having a conversation with that seller and you really don't have anything to offer. No offers are coming in, no showings are happening. Anybody want to chat on this or have a comment around this? All right, next one I had for you was also, and this kind of goes in coordination with a slower market, is contracts are falling through at the highest rate since 2017, so right around the same time. 15% of transactions are falling through. Let me see if I can blow this up for you a little bit. So that's quite a lot, right? These contracts falling apart. Number one reason, inspection issues at 28%. Buyer seller got cold feet, 23%. Financing issue, other than a high mortgage rate, was 14%. High mortgage rates, 13%. Outbid by another buyer. That's kind of weird. I don't know if the survey just didn't capture something right there. I don't know that 13% of the time you've got a deal together and another offer comes in and the seller says, I want to try and go with that other offer. We actually talked about that on this call last week, that the seller does have the right to do it, but I don't think it's happening at that clip. Appraisal issues, 5%, title issues, 1%, and other at 4%. Lauren, I see your hand up.
Good morning. Actually, we just went through this yesterday on one of the trainings that I had with a bunch of agents. And I think, honestly, that the last couple of years, the market and how quickly people are forced to make a decision is what's impacting this high level of terminations and contracts, right? We were talking about how 7-8 years ago when I started, houses were on for months, right? You were going with a buyer back to the property 2-3 times. spending plenty of time in that house, allowing for the actual decision and thought process around putting an offer in on a property. And people were a lot more confident in the decisions they were making. Where the last couple of years, you see a house for 30 minutes and you have to decide whether you want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. So I think in reality, probably the inspection plus cold feet can really kind of be combined on there, because a lot of times it is cold feet going into, oh my God, what did I get into? You're putting all these things in front of me at inspection. And I really just think that now going back to a time where things are on a little bit longer and people have time to process before making these decisions, we should also probably see a decline again in the number of terminations that we have.
Yeah, I'd like to chat today about what you guys are doing to mitigate this, because I've got a bunch of ideas in my head about what we can do to mitigate it, but I would like to get the dialogue going with you guys. What are some of the things that we can do to mitigate these high fall through rates? Because there's nothing worse. You know, and I want to see it, I want to hear from you guys on the buy side and on the list side. What can we do? Because for a seller, this is brutal. You lose all the momentum. Oftentimes you go back to the other couple of buyers maybe that might have been interested. They've already moved on to another property. This is interactive. I don't want to just be the teacher. Well, I'll start with one on the listing side. I think it's time to start really pushing pre-inspection, right? I think pre-inspection, certified pre-owned home, I think starts to make a lot of sense right now, because when these buyers do their inspection and there's a laundry list of stuff, and half of those things you could have fixed for $500 to $1,000, it was just tic-tac stuff. I just think you missed the boat, you know? For a few $100, go and get yourself a pre-inspection done, and fix some of these things. And you know, you guys know, if you were buying a car used, do you feel more confident as the buyer in the certified pre-owned Honda or just a pre-owned Honda, right? Went through a 18-point inspection or whatever they did at Honda to certify that that thing was pre-owned. It's the same thing when you're buying a house. So we can really help the fall throughs if we can get these done. And I think you are not doing your due diligence if you're not having this conversation with the seller and at least giving them the option. They don't have to do it, but and me personally, I'm going to push for this really hard and sell this really hard, because I think it's in the seller's best interest. I always look at it as, is it something I would do if I was selling my house? And 100%, this is something that I would do. Lauren, did you have something? No.
I was just turning my camera back on and I just happened to still be up here. I
right.
Can keep talking, but if anybody
Well, I think
else has
Martin's
something.
got his hand up as well.
Okay,
Go ahead, Martin.
let's go with Martin.
So I just have a quick question regarding that. So I have a possibility coming on. They bought the house a couple months ago. They do have that. They did get inspected and all that. Can we use that, or does it have to be a brand new inspection?
No, I think that's better than nothing, right? Hey, you know, seller just bought the home. Happy to share the home inspection report from when they did it. I think the other nice thing is when you do a few of the things, right? And so you can say, hey, that you can show the inspection report, and then you can show some stuff crossed off. Seller was, you know, has repaired these items, and so now you know you're going in with these items that still need repair. Right? And we talked about this a couple of calls ago too, about an educated buyer that's making an offer and saying, hey, look, here's our offer. And this includes the fact that we know we've got to replace the furnace. We know we got to replace the roof. We know that the hot water heater's got to be replaced. So if I've got that offer with an agent that made that phone call to me, and I got another offer that's very similar, but the other agent didn't mention the fact that they've already taken that stuff into account and they won't be asking for that stuff, then I feel more confident in the buyer that made the offer with an agent that communicated that, hey, we're aware of these things, right? And so now you can make all buyers aware of everything. And this should really decrease that fall through rate. Anybody done one recently, or want to just kind
Steve,
of
hey, it's
talk?
John, real
Yeah.
quick. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a program. We do a lot of cell side pre-inspections, and it's called Know Your Home, and it's a 5-point specific to mechanical, electrical, plumbing, roof, and basic foundation. And the clients that have used that have found it very beneficial, and it's less expensive than a standard full inspection. But we're hitting all the key points, which is what you want.
And just ballpark, John, 2,000 square foot house, a regular inspection costs X, and your home inspection or a pre-listing inspection would cost Y. Ballpark.
It's $100 at least less than what our standard
So,
rate is.
okay.
And that includes a full report.
So anybody done one recently? I'll just chat with how the seller reacted. Anybody had the conversation with the seller? They didn't want to do it because of X or Y or Z. Are we not having this conversation with our sellers?
The only time I see a seller not wanting to do it is once they hear that line, if you have a known defect in the property, you have to disclose it, right? So sometimes if they know that potentially there's something that could come up, they'll say, I know I have a desirable house. We're going to price it right. I'll let them come. I don't want to have to put it out there and potentially put a red flag on my property. So that's the only time I've heard a negative. Otherwise, I like it, right? Because even if it is one of those things like you're saying, a red flag, have it out there, right? Let them come in, know or have quotes for what it's going to take to remediate it so you can share that as you're doing the negotiations. But yeah, I think that's the only.
Yeah, I think we need the talk track. If that's what they're telling you, you need to be able to combat that with. It's going to be a lot. They're not going to miss this, right? I mean, assuming that it's a pretty visible issue, like they're not going to miss this. So we're going to go through all of this, launch that we're doing with our marketing. We're going to get these offers. We're going to go with this one. Everything's great. They're going to do their home inspection. This is going to come up and the deal's going to fall apart. Let's just address this now. Or at least go into the deal with a buyer that we know is aware of the issue. I really don't see too many scenarios, but I'd like to be challenged on this where it doesn't make sense for the seller to do it. Outside of the weird COVID scenario that we had, right, where people are just waiving everything, then maybe, it doesn't make sense there. But you're in a normal market. I don't see a scenario where it doesn't make sense for the seller.
Steve, I feel like my only thought on this, to play devil's advocate, is if a buyer is seeing this on one property and there's a similar property that didn't do an inspection report, are they going to be naive enough to just go towards the one that didn't have the inspection report and all the known issues out there, just thinking it will be better?
I mean, my response to that is, are you buying a certified car, certified pre-owned, or are you going to go to, the guy, the used car guy that doesn't have certified pre-owned by Honda? If I could have the choice between the two, it's the same car, it's the same price. I want the certified pre-owned one. I want to know that this thing got looked over and what the potential issues are. So that's me. I don't know. Again, that's why we're having the dialogue, guys. Speak up if you think otherwise. Or talk to me about a scenario where this doesn't make sense. I'm sure there's something out there. Adam, did you and Jared have something to add, or did we lose you guys?
Hey, just one thing I think is almost immediate savings. A lot of times because I've been doing the pre-inspections on the remodeled homes that I'm putting back to market, and a lot of times we'll have termite issue, but it's minimum to it's we see it a lot at the bottom of basement stairs. There might be part of the one of the rim joists or something, and usually the cost to repair that one or two spots is probably less than an inspection report or a termite report, right? So obviously in Massachusetts, if they find termite damage, you're responsible for the first $1,000. A lot of times the cost to repair that termite damage is going to be less than you being forced to pay for the first $1,000, and you've got a squeaky clean, no termite house. So that savings alone is probably worth having the inspection. You know, the amount of times I've paid $200 to fix a piece of wood, and now the house has no termite damage on the report. It looks better, and I didn't have to pay $750 to get my house treated for termites. So just a little thought there.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of where this can really start to save the owner some money. Now, I just want to be clear. If I represent the buyer on these homes and I'm buying a certified pre-owned and I've got a home inspection in front of me, I'm still recommending to my buyer that we do our own home inspection. Right? I'm not saying that we take the word of this inspection. I'm just saying from a seller side, it gives a little bit more confidence to the buyer, and I think the deals are going to stay together. But I still would recommend to the buyer that we do our own home inspection. Anything else on the listing side? Lauren, is your hand back up?
Yes, it is. To go along with your
What happened to your camera,
certified.
Lauren?
Oh, sorry. I don't know. It's here. To go along with the certified home, just second piece of that, right? If you have somebody who maybe doesn't want to go through and remediate a lot of these things, offering up that 1-year home warranty to go along with it. So if you're now putting out that home inspection report, plus offering up a 1-year warranty that's going to cover a lot of the main systems, now you're like 2 steps ahead of what other people are putting out there. And second thing, our contracts that we use in Massachusetts now no longer have the verbiage where the listing agent or the seller is responsible for that first amount of the termite. That was our old contracts. We don't have that anymore in Massachusetts.
Great, great point. Sir, Martin is asking, what would be the total cost of a certified pre-owned home? It varies, Martin, right? No different than the car scenario. A, we got to pay for that inspection, and then B, how much are we going to fix, right? You might not fix anything. You might just say, hey, we did the home inspection. We just wanted you to be aware. We want every buyer to acknowledge that you've reviewed this home inspection report and you're aware of the things that are wrong with the property going into the deal. We're not fixing anything. Or, hey, we did the report, we fixed X and Y, we didn't do Z. Or, hey, here's a report, we fixed every critical item that the home inspector pointed out. Yeah, there's a couple of maintenance or deferred maintenance things that you might have to do over time. We didn't take care of those, right? So it all depends on, in my mind, what the seller wants. I think you got to take care of kind of the critical safety issue type of things, almost get it to the point. I think you're in your best case to make it FHA ready if you can. That just opens up a bigger pool of buyers, right? And that's what you're going to explain to the seller. Hey, why should I do this? Well, I don't know what the numbers are. Somebody wants to do a quick chat GPT, but what % of buyers, are coming with an FHA loan? I don't know if our lenders, if you guys have any kind of stats around that, Eric or Dan, if you guys are on, I mean, I would gotta believe, I don't know, in New England here, 25% of the deals, FHA, 20%, 15, who's got a number? But I'd like to have access to an extra 15% of the buyer pool.
Chat GPT says 23.
Yeah, so I was close. Right? So this is why should I do that? Well, this is why we just opened up, for every 100 buyers previously, 23 of them couldn't buy your house. And then on the 1-year warranty, Martin, I think it goes by size of house or price point. I don't know. American Home Shield is kind of your biggest offering in this space. And I want to say you're talking somewhere between $500 and $1,000 to offer the 1 year. If anybody's done one of those recently and wants to give a specific number, go for it.
It's right around like that, those same numbers you were talking, but it's more so what systems you want covered than size of the property.
Okay.
So you're paying for the coverage of what systems you want covered more than.
All right. Anything else on the listing side to help deals not fall apart? What else are we doing? This is a good topic.
I mean, this is a simple one, but just communication with the other side. I feel like on the listing side, you're kind of out of the loop a bit. You have to be proactive to just reach out and keep the communication open.
Yeah, and I think this starts right from the get-go. Like, it shocks me how many times, when I was in production, I'd make my offer gets accepted, no questions. How long you been doing this? How long you been working with this buyer? Have they ever backed out of a deal before? How do you know this buyer? How many houses have you shown them? Why are they moving? I'm not telling you you're going to get all the answers, but I kind of like to know these things, right? Hey, I've been working with these guys for 6 months. We made a couple offers. We've lost out on them, but man, they really love this one. Versus, it's an online lead. I met them at your house. Those are two completely different scenarios if I'm accepting an offer from that agent. I want to know those things. Who's the lender that you're using? Let me give a ring over there. What docs have they collected? How long ago did they collect them? How long has that lender been in business? How many deals did he do in the last 12 months? How many of those have not gone to the closing table? Ask the questions, right? We can't just get our group of offers in and not do our due diligence if we're representing these sellers the right way. We got to be grilling these buyers agents about the details of this offer. And this is why it's so important on the buy side. If you come to the table with all of this stuff put together, we have a templated email that we recommend our agents use when they make the offer. At a minimum, you've got to have that template going. Nicole, did you have something?
Took me a second. Just also inspection conversations before the inspection on the listing side. Have you talked to your buyers? Do you know what they're looking for? Any red flags or any major concerns?
What else on the seller side? Anybody have any other things? I think we really got to sharpen our skills here. We got to get this right moving forward as the market slows. Margaretta.
Morning, all. Of course, I have to chime in. Look at the property before you list it. Look at the boundaries. Make sure that there's no possible, issues with where the plan is, and just maybe even have that conversation if it's a very large lot. Maybe was it surveyed? Do they have any records of it? The other thing is make sure you check if there's any open permits. I'm not sure if you guys going into that because permits, they take in a permit, maybe recognize there might be an issue with it. Have a conversation with the seller, how they will address that going forward if that becomes an issue. So just kind of making a full circle around, what are you really selling? And if somebody has lived at a property for a while, it might have been something they've put in themselves, which is perfectly fine. But was there any permit? Was there any issues around that specific installation?
Yeah, those are all great things. And sometimes I think you might think, well, these are little things, or do we really need to check on this? And here's the critical piece to why I think all these extra little things that you can check with the seller, doing the title stuff up front, checking for surveys, plot plans, et cetera, is because what we see happen a lot of times is, well, no big deal. We'll just, we just got to extend for 30 days and, we'll get it resolved and we'll do the closing. Well, what if the buyer doesn't want to extend? What if they can't extend, right? We see this happen quite a bit where something comes up on the seller's side and the buyer is not in a position where they want to wait, or maybe they can't wait, right? Or maybe they saw another property that hit the market since they had got an accepted offer on yours, and they were like, ah, man, that would have been nice. And now this comes up, and now they go, shoot, let's just back out of this deal, and we'll go buy that other one. Like, these are the types of things that start to happen. You want to get that property under contract and get it closed as soon as possible before something happens during the 30 to 45 to 60 days that it takes to close. Something happens to the buyer, something happens with their job, something happens in their personal life, and they back out. So if we can have our ducks in a row, it just doesn't allow for any of these things to happen. All right, let's talk about on the buy side. Right, we've talked about the things the seller can do to mitigate. What can you guys do on the buy side to mitigate, to help these deals stay together? Martin.
I think it's important, especially during inspection, where a lot of buyers think something's like super detrimental, but it really isn't, because we've seen it so many times. It kind of explained to, if there's a little bit of rust, let's just say on the water heater, doesn't mean it's the end of life of the water heater that's going to explode or anything like that. I think that's the biggest thing, just communication. Be there at the inspection and kind of walk them through it, and say, hey, these are some of the things we found. Is it detrimental, or is it just something that, it looks bad, but really isn't bad?
Yeah, and I would like to take it one step further than what you're talking about, because I think being really good at having those conversations when inspection issues come up, it helps. I think having a good home inspection company that isn't an alarmist, helps. But I think there's something even more that we can do. I don't know if, Lauren, I see your hand up. I don't know if that's where you were going or you had something else.
I kind of had a list. So if you have one point, you can get to that. And then if there's anything left around it.
My take on the home inspection stuff is this should be part of a buyer's presentation. Get a home inspection and walk them through it. Nobody's doing that on the buy side. Walk them, show them a home inspection. Show them how long it is, how many issues there are, right? White out the personal information and walk through. This is what it's going to look like. And this is pretty normal. Maybe have a couple. Hey, on this one, there was these couple issues. This one, right? This is what we're not buying brand new. And even when we're buying brand new, we all know that there still could be some issues. But a buyer shouldn't be seeing a home inspection report for the first time on the house that they're buying, right? Unless, obviously, if you've got an investor, they know what they're doing. They bought multiple properties before, but you got a first-time home buyer, you got somebody that hasn't bought a home in a long time, I think you've got to show them what a home inspection report looks like and just prepare them for, hey, we're going to come up with some issues. That buyer is significantly less likely to back out of a deal than the one who just gets up against it. We finally got our accepted offer, and now there's stuff wrong with the house, and dad comes in and dad says, oh my God, there's a million things wrong with this house. We're not buying it. Nicole.
Just off of that, make sure you have all decision makers involved in that conversation. So if it's a younger couple or whoever, yes, they're the ones buying it. But if you know that parents are heavily involved, make sure they're part of that conversation too, because they're the ones that will sway something if they're at the inspection, or even worst case, if they're not at the inspection and they just see the report after. So try to get all parties involved in the conversation, and if possible, have the dad or whoever else might be in their ear at the inspection as well, so they can ask the inspector any questions.
Yeah, this is a great point, and it's extremely difficult to do. And when you've got commission breath, or you don't have a lot of deals under your belt, and you don't feel comfortable telling the buyer, well, I need all the decision makers there, you're going to show that person for 4 to 6 months. You're finally going to get an accepted offer. They're going to back out, and then they're going to say, we're just going to keep renting. And you've now wasted 6 months of your life with that client because you didn't have the conversation up front to say, here's why it's so important. Here's why we've got to do this. I want to make sure you guys understand. I'm not a door opener. I'm a professional, and this is how I go about my business. Drive the bus. Do it the right way. Get in live with these people and get the decision makers there. Lauren.
So my number one always with buyers is conversations and expectation setting. Right. So right from the very beginning, that's really going to start with that buyer consultation. I like to train, especially very new agents, have the scripts in front of you. Like I have these critical real estate ones written out in conversation form. Some people are like, I hate sounding robotic. I would rather you get out the information that needs to be gotten out, you reading off of this so everybody's on the same page till you're internalizing it, rather than like you were saying, word vomiting or getting that commission breath going. Setting these expectations, knowing what conversations have to take place at each step. I always push the showing the inspection report, like you had said, during that buyer consultation. Knowing that you have the right financing in place, because we are a lot of conversation around inspections themselves for reasons of termination, but there are other factors to it too, right? So what fears do they have? That's going to come into that cold feet. What are we doing for financing? And really just having the expectations of every single one of these set up is going to help reduce the chances of those terminations going in.
And I think the key is if you're nervous about like, well, nobody else is making him do all this stuff, you need to play it of like, your other agent didn't do this stuff, right? This is par for the course. This is how a professional agent goes about their business. We've got to have these conversations, and here's why. Anything else on the buy side? Best question for the buyer is, what is your plan B? I love that question with the buyers. If we're unable to find a house, what is your plan B? You are looking for, we don't have a plan B. I've got to get out of my mom's basement. Right? We don't have a plan B. We're both renting and we can't afford for both of us to keep renting on these properties. We've got to combine, and it just doesn't make financial sense to keep going the way we're going. All right. What else do we have here? This next piece of news was pretty interesting. Local investors are bringing almost twice as much new inventory to the market as the builders are. Right? These are the fix and flip guys. And why do I think this is so important? Right? Because there are so many people that think they can fix and flip a property and have no idea what they're doing. And they're putting lipstick on a you-know-what. And so we've really, as agents, got to be careful, right? Who is the flipper? What is their reputation? Have they done this before? Do they have a pre-home inspection that they can provide you? Too many guys are cutting corners on this stuff, and your buyer is going to pay the price. It looks really, really good, but the finished product, a lot of it is not made to last, done the right way, done with permits. So please be careful out there. But that is that's a staggering number. I had no idea that it was that much fix and flip business was going on. But yeah, a lot of renovation going on. Anybody have any stories around that? Or Nicole, you got your hand up?
No, that was from before.
All right. Anybody have any experience shares around working with fix and flip, buying a fix and flip? Go ahead, Margareta.
Also on that note, I saw statistics that because we are so short on properties for purchase, the new build versus flip properties, there's just so much more flip properties, and they're way cheaper than new build. But obviously, the flip properties, if they're done right, they're adding a lot of value to the homeowner, and it's providing a much cheaper housing for people. So there's some statistic I saw recently that like just surprised me. I mean, we know that there's not enough new builds, but the value of a flip is consistently much more higher, and it's coming from small flippers, not something very organized. It's a small business kind of situation.
Anybody else on fix and flip, what you're seeing in the market?
I actually just had a file come up and it was a Connecticut deal. It closed back in January. And the buyers, who bought the property, they're now going through a divorce, so they have to sell. And when they went to get the property checked and listed, it was sold as a 4-bedroom flip and, 2-bathroom, 4-bedroom, everything was all set. They went, pulled all the work, found that no permits were pulled when any of the renovations were being done. So they technically only have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And this was a Connecticut property, and there's no language for permits in the purchase and sale for Connecticut. And so the only recourse that we have, because we have no permit language in that purchase and sale when it comes to the attorneys, is we had to go through title insurance, and we had to go through for a claim because the appraiser didn't pick it up when they came through. The inspector didn't pick it up when they came through. They said everything looked fine, but you got to dig a little bit deeper. So if you've got those flips, you definitely want to make sure that you're checking permits. You let your inspector know, hey, check everything to make sure, because they don't have a legal conforming purchase from what they bought.
And this is an interesting one, Katie. Like I had recently heard that title insurance covers this permit issue, which I'm shocked that they're covering this stuff. How exactly do they cover it? How did that? I don't know if that one's fully played out yet, but what exactly are they going to cover? They're going to cover the cost to get those permits done properly?
So we're just in the beginning stages of making the claim to title insurance. And we haven't even confirmed that they are going to cover. There are pieces of permitting that they will do, and especially the fact that they insured for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, but now the property that they actually have is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and so it's not legally conforming to the policy that they purchased either. And so I'm honestly not sure how it's going to play out. I don't know if they're going to fund litigation. I don't know if they're going to fund workers to come in and then they're going to, on the back end, go after the sellers to try to get something back. Connecticut is kind of a different animal when it comes to that stuff. But I can definitely keep everyone posted as we're going through the process and what the claims, the adjuster for the claims department comes back with for title insurance. But that is something new that came up as well. When that came up, first thing we do is go to the owner's policy and look at seeing if it's something that's covered.
Yeah, it's a great share. Martin, did you have a question, comment?
Yeah, so sold the house out in, we'll call it Beckett, and guy calls me the other day. He's like, "Yeah, we're starting to fix this up. We're gonna want you to list it." And he's getting permits for absolutely nothing. He's putting new electrical, putting new everything. So I'm just wondering, how is that going to affect the sale at the end of the day if we do list it and he's pulled nothing? Because he's, small town boy. Nobody needs to know anything. I can do it all myself. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's got electricians to do this stuff. I don't know if they're licensed, but they're electricians. If they're masters or if they're just apprentices, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is understanding that the homeowner can actually do a lot of the work themselves. And I don't know if Adam and Jared are still on. I'm not seeing them to have them speak to this. Brett, maybe are you familiar with how this stuff works? With what the homeowner can do themselves? He's in a position to chat. So there is some stuff that the homeowner can do without having any kind of a contractor's license, and I believe some of it without even permits. So I don't think all of it's going to be done illegally. So that's the good news. But sounds like a lot of it's going to not be done the right way. And so you've had these conversations, Martin, that this is going to, they are checking for this stuff moving forward, and he's just not willing to do it the right way.
His answer was, "Well, how are they going to know? I'm just going to say I bought it that way." And I'm like, okay, that's your prerogative. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to bite him in the ass, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I think this puts you in a tough position because and I don't know how I would go about this listing, because the fact that I think you're putting yourself and your license on the line. So this might be one for legal, to see what legally you can do to cover yourself. 'Cause I don't know that you're going to be able to take that listing if you are aware of that 100% that is being done and not the right way. So I don't. Has anybody dealt with this or have another solution? It's an interesting one.
I was just going to say, now that you know, you have a right to, you've got a duty to disclose. It's so his mentality of, you know, how are they going to know? I'll just say it was somebody else. You know, now you know, and it's your job to make sure that what you're putting forth is the correct and accurate information to the buyers, because as much as your duty is to your seller, you also have a duty to these buyers coming in, that you're giving them the correct information that you have, and you're not setting them up for problems down the road. It will, he's correct in the fact of, like, how are they going to know? If the work is done correctly and no permit is pulled, it's never going to cause an issue. It'll only cause an issue if, you know, the town comes in and they see it and it's non-conforming and it doesn't work. And then they're going to say, you know, this is not the way it was supposed to be done. It's going to cost you this much money to pull these permits, have someone come in, correct the work. If it's being done correctly, he's correct in the fact that there's no one who could come in and say that there's an issue, whether there was a permit pulled or not. If it's done correctly, it's not going to cause an issue because there's no repairs that are going to be needed. But if he's not using licensed, you know, mechanics and licensed materialmen who know what they're doing, you really run that risk of it's going to be a non-conforming property. And we're going to run into the same issue that I just ran into in Connecticut, where, you know, if they go to sell it down the road and someone comes in and they're like, this is, you know, you bought this as a 4-bedroom and it's non-conforming. This is 2 bedrooms and you're going to need someone to come in and do all these fixes. You're going to put yourself in that same position. And because you knew about it, you're going to be pulled right into any issues that come up, especially if this is a Massachusetts property, because like I say, there's permit language in the purchase and sales for Massachusetts. I know even in my riders, it says that the seller warrants that they did not do any work to the property while they owned it, and unless it was permit pulling necessary, and that they did pull any permits that were necessary if that's the case. So if he's agreeing and saying that that's what he's doing, that, I mean, it's not quite the same as perjury on the stand, but that's just outright lying.
Anybody else have any experience, similar situation? How'd you handle it? So yeah, Martin, I don't know. I can't think of any other way other than him doing it the right way. Now that you know that you can work with that client, so I'd like to see what legal has to say about it. So, you know, please make that call and report back to us, Lauren.
A lot of towns individually, and ChatGPT, huge saver, because if you put in the town specifically and what the town has for bylaws on what does and doesn't need to go for permits for rebuilds, it'll give you for that town specifically. Still, we should go beyond that. We can provide that list, but a little bit of information for ourselves that we can look up there. Again, I don't want to know these things and put my license on the line. It's not worth it for me. And then I know John was trying to raise his hand. I saw him waving it at his camera. He had something to say.
So typically you have to have the major trades permitted. So mechanical, electrical, plumbing, foundation, roof. That's why we focus on those areas on the pre-list and the buy side. But typically you cannot do those major trades yourself, and you can get into a lot of trouble.
Anybody else on this
That
topic?
was it.
It seems like it's a fine line between where it's decided to be cosmetic upgrades with even kind of these trade things, right? So it says plumbing, if you're changing out faucets, those you can do without permits, right? But if you're changing actual plumbing out, you need to. If you're changing out electrical fixtures or even some outlets, if you're changing them for like kinds, those you don't need permits for, but beyond that, you would. Even patches on roofs for a couple towns I saw, you don't need. Replacing windows with the same size and type, you don't need. So I think it's a little bit of gray area with the level, what can and can't be done. And
Yeah, and I know a lot of times, like the inspectors, you're almost getting on their bad side if you're trying to pull like a permit for swapping out a faucet, you know. So yeah, it's knowing the town, but I don't know that the towns control what is permit required. I thought that had to do with like the licensure, like the general contractor license, and you know, state by state. So I know Brett was dropping his son. I don't know if he'll be able to get back on prior to call any, but I'd love to get his take. Martin.
So there's really no gray area. He does have his GC, but he's moving the electrical panel. Definitely putting in new windows. Some are smaller. Redoing the kitchen, which to me, the redoing the kitchen is not a big deal, but you know, putting in new mini split stuff like that, all of which he's basically paying these people cash to save money, which you know, from my standpoint, I get, but at the same time, I was kind of trying to explain to him, if you're going to sell this, I don't want you having issues. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Nicole, are you in a position to chat? Are you still on with us? Yeah. Could you talk to, I thought it was a good experience, share about what happened with your unrepresented buyer. Let's maybe finish up with this one and how that all played out.
For the showing or for putting in an offer?
No, let's start with the showing.
Well, the showing, I haven't heard back from legal, but from ChatGPT, if an unrepresented buyer wants to see the property, this is for Connecticut specifically, without any agent present, if I wasn't available as the listing agent, it said it is up to the MLS rules and the brokerage. So
yeah, so this is a scenario where you've got a buyer who wants to see a property, unrepresented. Nicole can't be there as the seller's agent, and the seller says, no problem, I don't care, you know, we'll be there. We're happy to let him look at the property, right? The issue was that they weren't going to stay in the house. Was that it, Nicole?
the sellers weren't going to stay in the house?
Right, they were going to like go outside and be in the driveway.
Yeah, they were going to be in the driveway. It just, even regardless, I think, of if they were in the driveway or in the house with them, it was just if they were able to go through without any type of representation, just for liability purposes.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else has been in a similar scenario. That was an interesting, just an interesting one. I've never
Yeah,
been
sorry,
in that.
I don't have much more about it until I hear back from legal. But
Yeah.
As far as, I reached out to KB and she said as long as the sellers were okay with it, Real is okay with it.
Yeah, and that's kind of my take. Like at the end of the day, the seller's the boss here. If the seller says, like, I don't want to miss out on this buyer, get him over here. I don't know how, as an agent, you're supposed to say no. You know, like that is the seller telling you what I want to happen in the scenario, and they're well aware of everything. So, anybody else have some similar situation that was kind of weird with regards to a showing or representation or anything like that that you'd want to share with the group? All right, well, let's finish off with this last one that I had. I've had this happen quite a few times, and I think we can talk about it both on the buyer side and on the seller side, but we're going to start with on the buyer side. And it's when the buyer doesn't want to sign the agreement, because if you read the fine print in the agreement, it says that even if they don't buy the house, they owe a commission. Right? So when some buyers read that, they get like, hey, what is this language? Even if I don't buy a house, I owe you a commission, right? And so when you read the fine print on that stuff, I just want to make sure everybody understands, if they are to back out, obviously for normal reasons, inspection, can't get a mortgage, etc., they wouldn't owe the the agent, the brokerage, any commission. No commission due in that scenario. What that language is in there is it's protecting you from the buyer that you do all the work, everything's fine, and on the day of closing, for no reason, or maybe for a reason in their mind, but not for a contractual reason, the buyer wants to back out of the deal. Right? They're willing to lose their deposit, no problem. I'm just backing out, and now you're left kind of holding the bag, expecting to get a commission out of the deal. So, in theory, by the law, that contract, they owe you the commission in that scenario. Right? Do you have to collect on it? Maybe that depends on, the relationship that you have. Do you think that this client is going to buy in the future and you've just got to, chalk it up as a loss? Have they been difficult and you want to push the envelope on this one? Are they going to send you referrals in the future? Maybe you say, hey, you got to pay me half, or you negotiate something for your time and energy. But I want to kind of throw that out on the buy side. Anybody come across this, or how do you handle it, or how have you dealt with it if it actually happened to you? Anybody have a share around this, or just any other words that, or how you're explaining it to a buyer? Man, you guys are morning Joe. We gotta get you guys espresso shots. All right, let's talk about on the seller side. Same type of thing. Seller says, hey, this says in here, whether I sell the property or not, I owe you a commission. Right? So how do we handle it there? It's very similar to the buy side. The only thing that I recommend, and we do on our contracts, is regardless, you've got to pay, whether you're going to charge them the commission or not, we write into our contracts, you're paying for the marketing. You want out of this contract, hey, you've decided not to sell, or for whatever reason, like buyer fell, backed out of the deal, and we are, we can come back to market, or you know what, you don't want to sell it anymore. You got to compensate for the marketing. A good agent shouldn't just be throwing a sign in the ground, a couple of cell phone pictures, and put it in the MLS. There's a lot more that's going into it with mega open houses, professional photography, time and energy, and calling top agents in that market to push the property. Potentially a broker's open, and then you just want to not sell. I'm happy to let you out of the contract, right? But you got to compensate me for the time, and definitely for the hard costs that I had. So I don't know if anybody else handles that a little bit different, or what your conversation sounds like with the seller. Don't let yourself be exposed in your contracts without something in there along the lines of how you're going to get compensated if this deal doesn't come to fruition. All right. Well, I hope you guys learned a little something. Appreciate you guys jumping on every Wednesday. Take some notes, jot down your scenarios, send me your pictures of weird stuff that you're finding in a property, and let's do this again next week. Have a great week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.